Come on now. You have to push a button, Ryan, or does it go?
Should be up now.
Still not going live. Do you have to activate it? Hit a button to make it go live?
Yeah, it's live.
Oh, Italy have scored.
Because we're 1 minute past now.
It's live.
Oh, here we go. Where does it go? All right, welcome everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Daily Gooner Pod. No longer with the Sports Talk Network. We're all on our own. I'm Raphael, joining you from the United States. Here is our usual cast of suspects from London. Joining me directly above me on your grid is Ryan. Welcome, Ryan.
Hello, mate. Glad to be back.
Always good to be back. To his left is Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Hi, mate. I hope you're well.
And in the fourth seat this week, we welcome back Jacob. Welcome back, Jacob.
Thanks for having me back.
All right, lots to talk about. Obviously, lots of transfer chatter, incomings, outgoings. Throw names at you: Tavares, Lokonga, White, Bellerin, Locatelli. You know, we're going to touch on them all today, but we're going to begin with a gentleman whose Arsenal career pretty much all ended at the end of the season, but whose connection with the club probably ended just a few minutes ago. We're talking about Granit Xhaka, who is captain of Switzerland. Obviously, they just fell to Spain in the Euros. Ryan, I'm going to begin with you because you are the strongest and have been the longest Xhaka partisan on this program. Just wrap up. First off, where are we? It looks like he's going to Roma, although there was some chatter in the last few days that other big clubs in Europe are coming in. Let's begin with that. Is he certain to Roma, or are these other clubs, Arsenal, trying to bump up the price for him because Roma's trying to lowball? There's that tug of war.
Yeah, I'm glad you've asked me because I'm obviously absolutely devastated that he's leaving. But all three of you know, I've been a massive advocate of the man, the leader, and the player himself. So it's quite sad for me personally, but I think it's the right time. And to answer your questions about Roma, I think they're trying to lowball us. They haven't upped their first bid, which was 12 million euros, which I think is just above 10 million pounds, which is ridiculous when you see players like Harry Wilson from Liverpool being linked to a 20 million pound move to Benfica. So, and the other clubs that were linked, PSG, Juventus, it's all because of his good performances in Europe, in the Euros, the price is rising, and other clubs are taking notice. I don't think they are as interested as being made out. I think Arsenal have done some dirt there on Roma, trying to push the price up a little bit and get them to pay what they want. And now he's out of the Euros, I do think that will speed up a little bit. You see Jose Mourinho arriving in Rome today. They've reported that he is doing moves directly, going to be involved in the moves directly. So I expect that one to speed up in the next few days.
All right, and Sam, we know that the player has already agreed terms with the club. It's been reported for weeks that he and Mourinho have been in constant contact. It seems like it's Arsenal digging in, saying we're not going to be lowballed no matter what.
Yeah, and this is where the club has failed in previous seasons, but it's good to see in a certain way. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a case of where Arsenal accept Roma's offer, because I believe Arteta will say, look, he wants to go, he doesn't want to be here. If he stays here because the moves collapse, he probably won't sign a new deal. So we're going to be losing value anyways. As Ryan said, it's a disappointing figure, but it is what it is. It opens up another squad space, and then players come and go. The club stays the same. So,
all right, and Jacob, you're going to get a meaty one here because we know Granit Xhaka is. It seems as Sam said, it's just a matter of when he goes. Probably 99% he goes to Roma. So who replaces him? Lots of names have been kicked around this summer, starting with Ruben Neves of Wolves. That's gone quiet recently. The hot name this week is from Sassuolo in Serie A, Manuel Locatelli, who's playing very well for the Italian national team. Some stories this week that Arsenal, a lot of contradictory stories, but what we had yesterday, Arsenal have put in a formal bid. It seems that his home club wants 40 million euros for him, somewhere around 34, 35 million pounds, which is a little cheaper than the other targets. I don't know how that compares, say, with Yves Bissouma at Brighton Hove Albion, but Arsenal's looking at another Albion player. We'll get to that in a moment. But a lot of talk that he really wants to stay in Italy and go to Juve. Juve is interested in him, but also reports that Juve probably can't afford him. What the Sassuolo chairman said yesterday was Arsenal made a serious bid and that their club was going to meet with Juve this coming week to see if that club could come up with or could match or surpass Arsenal's bid. A lot to chew on there, a lot of uncertainty. A lot of people are saying, oh, Arsenal's being used. A lot of people are looking at Juve's finances, which are terrible, and saying, well, maybe he's not. So what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one with Locatelli. My gut feeling is that all this talk of the president saying they have a special relationship with Juve, it's kind of a pressure from the players' camp and from the club just saying, look, we've got other interest. You want him. We know you want him. You might as well just pay up. So I think there's definitely interest. I think that's pretty clear. Obviously, you've got other media saying there isn't a bid made. So it is interesting that the president has come out and said there definitely is one. But yeah, my gut feeling on that one is that he probably will end up at Juve. But if they don't stump up the cash, then the player will have an interesting choice to make, whether he waits another year for Juve or if he fancies the Premier League and, a starting spot with Arsenal. He's certainly one of the bigger name targets out of the others we're linked with.
All right, Ryan, hot and fresh off the internet, I guess. You just posted something in our group. You want to share it. This relates to Matteo Guendouzi. Actually, I have a follow-up Locatelli question for you, but share with you've just seen come across the ether, if you will.
Yeah, William Saliba potentially to Marseille on loan. Seeing some rumblings of that on the Twitter sphere. So that I think if he's going on loan, I think it needs to be in the Premier League. I don't see a point of sending him back to the French league for a third loan. He's not going to get used to the league and adapt to the league if he's just going to go and play in a league that he's used to. So if he does go to Marseille, I would say that's a very, very bad choice from us allowing it to happen.
Okay. Let's stay with Locatelli, though, because you've seen Manuel Locatelli play a lot. This is inside baseball for those of us on the pod, but you've been talking about him for weeks and certainly starting the European tournament. What can you say to the followers about him? How does he compare to Granit Xhaka if he's being seen by the club as a Xhaka replacement?
So, yeah, as you mentioned, I've watched Locatelli for a while. Me and Sam did a At the Bar episode where I spoke about Sassuolo's Jeremy Boga, and I scouted him throughout the whole season. And Locatelli really caught my eye in these games. And Locatelli is, I don't want to say he's similar, but he kind of reminds me of Cazorla, the way he moves on the ball, and he can use both feet. He's comfortable on the right, comfortable on the left. He's 6 foot plus. He's just an absolute beast. He's a lot more athletic than Xhaka is. So he can move across the floor a lot quicker than Xhaka. His mentality and his concentration is exactly the same, but he doesn't make those bozo mistakes. He's very calm, collected on the ball. He can receive the ball with his back to play. He doesn't mind taking it in those dangerous spots, similar to how Ceballos did for us. And except he doesn't spin around 4 or 5 times trying to find a pass. He will
before he makes it.
Yeah, he'll ping it left or right if he can with either foot. So I think he would be a massive, massive upgrade on Xhaka, and that's coming from one of Xhaka's staunchest supporters. And I think I think he just beats Xhaka in every department. And I was looking at statistically, the only thing Xhaka beat him on was turnovers.
Okay. It's good to get rid of that too. Sam, we also can't complain about his price either. I think 34 million, if we compare, that's more than, say, or less rather, than what Wolves wanted for Neves, probably less than what Albion wanted for Basuma. So in terms of outlay and potential, it fits the budget.
It does indeed. It's a bit of a steal. Let's be completely honest about it. But what will it happen? As it's up in the air at the moment. I think a lot of it comes down to whether Juve can put the money down. I don't think they can. See reports saying that Sassuolo's legs trembled when we put down the €40 million bid. So ultimately, Sassuolo want money up front. If we're able to give it to them, I can see this one going full steam ahead. Also, just to put into the thought, is that Locatelli is actually open to a move abroad, because as we know, a lot of Italians like to stay within Italy in the Serie A, don't really go abroad. And so to say that he's open to new adventures, new challenges and playing abroad could be a big factor to us. But obviously we know the preference is Juventus, but everyone has a preference. Doesn't mean that he's not excited to move to another team elsewhere.
All right, but let's stay with that, because again, this is a cynical fan base, and there's some reason for cynicism in the marketplace. And when Arsenal are put next to Juve, a lot of people say, well, okay, Juve will come up with a bid. Mm-hmm. Now, they've already tried to offer players plus money for Locatelli, have they not?
Yes, they've also tried to do a loan with obligation. So that was flat out rejected. Sassuolo want the money now. They don't want it in next year. And if you look at the players that Juve got, even the fringe players, I don't think many would swap Juve for Sassuolo. So even if a bid was accepted for that, cash plus players, I don't see the players accepting personally.
So let's just say this, it's in the realm of possibility, right? We're not going to knock it down here and say, well, it's impossible, this has never happened. And it's rare that, let's face it, it's rare that Italian players come. And I think it's very rare. I can't think of a starting 11 player who's come from Italy to Arsenal.
No. And another thing is that you've got to factor in, and I had this conversation last night, we would have had encouragement from Locatelli's camp, the people in and around him through intermediaries, that he would be happy to come to us, because Arsenal don't just throw out bids for the sake of throwing out bids. We only put a bid in when we know that the player is concretely interested in coming to the club. It's as simple as that. And people were saying, well, by that logic, then it's the same with Emil Smith-Rowe. No, it's not the same with Emil Smith-Rowe, because he's had an verbal agreement with Arsenal that he's going to sign when he's coming back from holidays. So two different scenarios. And the fact of the matter is that Arsenal know that Locatelli is interested in coming. Otherwise, a bid wouldn't have gone in.
All right. So something that bears watching, certainly early next week, once the weekend sorts itself out. You know, Italy's leading right now, so it looks like his Euro play is going to continue. That might be a hindrance. Jacob, let's bring you back, though. Let's talk about Arsenal have concluded some business, certainly in the last couple of days. Nuno Tavares, backup left back from Benfica, is done. And this is a move that came out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere. A lot of talk at the beginning of the window of looking at Ryan Bertrand, veteran backups, people of that ilk. And then here comes this rather young player from Portugal. A lot of people are still trying to get their heads around who he is, how good he is. What do you know about him?
I can't say I know too much about Tavares. He's certainly not one that was on my radar and all these when we were talking about all the options, who the possible signings were. Obviously, a lot of speculation in our chat. But obviously, I've had a look at him since the news has come up, and he does. He looks like he would fit into the style of play that we've got pretty seamlessly. He is going to get up that wing, same kind of role that Tierney has. So, which is a marked change on last season. If Tierney was out, we either had to put Cedric there, who obviously was on the other foot and, wasn't getting up that wing and delivering the same sort of balls Tierney was, or Xhaka, who again, although played well there, was a different style and it changed the whole style of the team because obviously he was out of midfield as well. So it would be a seamless fit, something I think Arsenal need. And I think it is really promising that we've gone for a young target, cheap as well. So it looks like a really smart and low risk signing to me.
All right, but let's do a follow-up because again, some people are starting to look at some of his play. He didn't play that much for Benfica last year. Didn't crack the first team. He still is young, but a lot of there was some criticism on Arsenal Twitter that this guy is not very good defensively. He's pretty good going forward. I guess the question comes down to how coachable is this kid, and is he another kind of player? Let's say we can look at Saka as an example, a kid who played on the wing, who played forward, who was needed to play at left back. Mikel Arteta and his assistants were able to kind of mold him into a very serviceable, better than serviceable left back. Is this another similar project to your eyes? Put me on the spot here.
Who's it for?
No, I'm following up with Jacob. It's like, hey, I got one for you. There's plenty for everybody. There's so many names, so don't mean to cause confusion. But I mean, Jacob, this is they're putting Mikel Arteta's kind of throwing the hat over the wall, saying, "I can fix this kid. I can build this kid up." So, yeah,
it's in that regards from some of the videos or some of the reports fans have made about him. It's an interesting one because we know Arteta doesn't take any nonsense. He's already cleared the club out of some characters who have messed around or aren't willing to buy in. So I am sure that club representatives have had a long chat with him and they must be confident that they can, get him to buy into the philosophy, get him to buy into the behaviour of the club and what, those non-negotiables we've heard so much about. I think it's clear, as well as the talent, that is something they are trying to do their research on in the scouting process. So although there definitely is some, some things that might seem a little bit odd from the outside, I'm pretty sure the club are confident that they will get him on board and buying into, the philosophy of the club and the attitude that Arteta wants from his players.
Okay, Ryan, let's move from one seemingly done deal to a second. We talked about Locatelli perhaps being a Xhaka replacement. Dani Ceballos, long gone, returned to Real Madrid. Looks like Arsenal's second signing is a guy who could replace him, a young player from Anderlecht named Albert Lokonga. Very young player, very tall, very athletic. Again, seemingly Arteta's saying to us through these signings, I'm willing to bring in pieces of clay I can form, but it seems that Lokonga is a lot more than that. He seems to be a lot more advanced. What does he offer? What do you see looking at him?
I can't say I've seen much of the Belgian league, so I can only go from what I've seen on YouTube and that sort of thing. But it seems to me that Arteta's just gone to Edu, find me Thomas Partey that's under 21. and Eddie's gone, here you go, and there's Lukonga. Because obviously Thomas Partey is going to the African Cup of Nations, and if Arteta is dead set in playing a certain way and having the specificity in the positions and the players, Lukonga is a like for like with Partey. Locatelli is like for like with Xhaka. So I think, that's all I can really say. I think he's like for like with Thomas Partey.
Okay, Sam, the next most likely move, and we say this because of the negative stories that have come out in the last 24 hours. Looks like Ben White from Brighton is finally going to come about. Big money, close to 45, 50 million pounds, massive commitment by Arsenal on this player. And let's start with the beginning. When he was first announced, a lot of people were scratching their heads saying, why do we need a center back? Why are we beginning there? But now we're seeing a lot of uncertainty around William Saliba. Like Ryan mentioned at the beginning, if you're just joining us a little later, some chatter on the internet, we don't know how accurate it is, that William Saliba could be loaned again. We had a guest on last week who was saying, from Football London, Kaya Karnak, saying he could be a right back. Sort it out for us best you can. Is Ben, first off, what's the likelihood of Ben White coming? And where would he play if he came into Arsenal? Would he be the center of the back line on the right side, or is he going to be maybe worked at right back or on the right side of a back three?
So for me, the recent reports around Ben White, Everton coming in, I think City was the other one. For me, they're just paper fillers. We know this is pretty much 99.9% done. It's just a case of waiting for the Euros to be finished. Once that's done, I fully expect the announcement to be quick. People need to realise that we have not been progressive at the back when we didn't have David Luiz in. So to have Ben White in, he can do what David Luiz does, and he's extremely quick across the ground. So it gives us that extra stability in the middle. Kaya did say about him, and he's done a couple of articles saying that he could be playing as a right back. For me, I don't see that happening, but I absolutely respect Kaya's opinion and what he's written on that. I think Ben White is coming to play as the primary right-sided centre-back. If Saliba is still here come the end of the transfer window, then it will be down to them to fight out alongside Rob Holding for that starting spot. So if that is the case, and me and Ryan spoke about this earlier on, I have clamoured for Arsenal to have two players, maybe three players, depending on where it is on the pitch, that will really push each other in training, and to then get that starting spot and make it their own. And then if the other person doesn't get it, then they're able to then essentially really work and try and win that place back. So it benefits Arsenal in that point. So for me, it's a good thing, and we'll see what happens.
All right, I want to do a follow-up with you though, because you talked about Ben White's skill. It does look, and we know, I think Ryan talked about this, you've talked about this, Rob Holding's probably weakness as a player is his ability to play out with the ball. If you look at the players that Arteta's brought in, Gabriel can. We know that Pablo Mari can, maybe not as quickly, but he's very calm with the ball at his feet, doesn't get flustered. It seems that he wants that across his back four, and with David Luiz gone, he feels it. I mean, that's what the White move says to me. He wants stability, and Saliba could probably do that as well.
Yes, Saliba absolutely can do it. The question marks has been around Rob Holding. You've got to think, when we've been trying to play out from the back, it hinders, because we do tend to have the ball in the middle of the park, and it does tend to go back and be recycled across the back line. And when it goes to Rob Holding, he kind of divers on the ball and allows the opposition to regain some stability within their structure. But if you've got someone like Ben White, he's able to get his head up before he receives the ball, and he knows where he's going to go with it. Same with Saliba. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how we play out from the back. I said to Ryan this morning, the only question mark we're playing out from the back would be around Leno. But if he's going to stay, then it is what it is.
Okay, we'll get to keeper in a moment. Jacob, I want to give you a little meatier question here. I feel like putting you on the spot every time. But if it looks like Lokonga, Tavares, White, pretty close to completion, the next two, I think, priority spots, we talk about right back, but attacking midfielder. Martin Odegaard has gone back to Real Madrid. Some question of whether Real want to sell him or not. Obviously, a lot of chatter in the last couple of weeks that Arsenal are interested in James Maddison from Leicester City. That's kind of gone quiet in a few days, but that's a priority for Arsenal. If it's not, we'll talk about those two. Which one do you think would be, which one would you prefer? Which one do you think is more likely? And if those two fall through, where does Arsenal look? Because this is a priority position for them this summer.
Well, obviously, in the chat, that has been one of the biggest debates we've had recently. Personally, I would much prefer to get Odegaard back in the team. I think just the way he ticks everything together. Now, I know a lot of people look at stats and go, well, Maddison's got more goals, Maddison's got more assists. I'm not too worried about that. Odegaard brings in, the players that are going to finish for us, or going to, get Pepe in behind, get Smith Rowe further up the pitch, get Saka further up the pitch, get Aubameyang in behind. He does all of that, whether or not it's him getting the assist or putting, Pepe in behind to square it to someone else. But he just makes everything tick. Now, with Maddison, I do think he's more of a kind of grab the game by the scruff of his neck and do something himself, which is a great quality in itself. Personally, I would much prefer Odegaard back. But it does, at the moment, look like Maddison would be the more likely option. So, yeah, it's certainly an interesting debate. But, go on, Ryan.
All right.
David Ornstein has just tweeted, Arsenal defender William Saliba looks set to join Marseille on loan. Not done, but 20-year-old has picked Marseille from many options, and now clubs need to agree fee. Arsenal want him to get full season play and still part of long-term thinking. Ridiculous. I'm absolutely fuming.
Well,
I'm absolutely fuming.
Let's talk about that. I was going to give you a different question, but let's talk about that. Why did the club give him that option? I mean, I think you said it earlier. If he's going to move up from the French league, he really needs to play somewhere in the Prem. So why did they give him the option of Marseille? I don't understand that.
I can't. I don't know what to tell you, because that is single-handedly the stupidest decision, bar signing Willian, of Mikel Arteta's reign. How is Saliba going to get used to the Premier League by not playing in the Premier League? I don't get it. I just don't get it.
No.
But that also tells me that White is done, because we're not sending William Saliba on loan.
True. That's good. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That they would not have entertained this unless White was complete.
How fuming I am. I'm livid.
Well, I'm going to skip you over for a moment, let you calm down, because we'll come back to you. Sam, Jacob was talking about attacking mids, Odegaard, Maddison. Let's talk about the one who's being groomed in-house, Emile Smith Rowe. His name has been kicking around because it was assumed he was going to sign an extension, but we've seen some really cheeky bids coming in from Aston Villa, really insulting bids if you're an Arsenal fan, and people saying, well, they would not have done this if they were not being encouraged. And Smith Rowe hasn't signed his extension yet. What are we to take of all that? I mean, it seems that there's a lot of smoke here, but I don't know if there's a lot of fire to it.
I don't think so. As I said earlier, I think that there's been a verbal agreement between club and player before his holidays. I think they know around the ballpark figure that they're going to be signing him for. I suspect it'll be a long-term 5-year contract. It's just a case of as soon as he's back from holiday, pen to hand, back in London Colney, pictures taken of him signing contracts. Villa are just chancing their arm. And as you said, the bids have been massively insulting. Let's be serious right now. If Villa was serious about signing Emil Smith Rowe, their opening bid would be around about 60 to 70 million pounds.
Right. I would agree. I mean, 30 million is just laughing in your face.
Well, that's not even there. It started at 25.
Yeah. The 30 is,
so.
the second bid is just kind of adding to the insult. So
yeah.
So
that's basically it.
All right, I'm going to come back to you. See if you've calmed down just a
Probably
smidge.
not a good idea.
Give a little cooling off time. Let's talk about other problem children, and let's talk about an interesting development. I mean, we were assuming for the last month, when we were doing pods, if you've been following us on our site, that Andre Onana was going to come to Arsenal at some point, at some price, but it now appears he's going to Inter Milan. What does that tell us? Is Bernd Leno staying? What can we take of this and looking at Arsenal in the 2021-2022 season based on what's just gone on since we had our last pod?
Is that for me?
That's for you. We're back to you. I'm going to give you a little cooling off time.
What was about Leno? Where we're at with him?
Yeah.
I personally think he's going to sign a new contract. I think he's seen the sort of business that Arsenal are likely to do this summer, and I think he's thought, I'm going to have a proper solid defence in front of me, and he's going to. I don't really have a market, so I'll stay here. Best he's going to get, I suppose.
Okay, and there's some chatter now. Arsenal are going to extend him. So how likely is that now? I mean, it seemed Onana was going to be the option if he left, but now he's going to stay. Where would you put it? Where would you rate the odds that Leno extends at this point?
I would say 6 out of 10.
Okay, but
I do think we will sign Onana. I do think we'll sign him, whether that's this summer or in January. I do think we will get him, and I think this whole Aaron Ramsdale stuff is a bit of bluster, pissing in the wind. I think it is, to be honest with you. 35 million on a backup keeper doesn't make sense to me.
No, nor does it to me. I was about to ask you that, but you've just answered my question. Jacob, let's bring you in. Again, so many names, so many directions we can take this, but let's talk about the players in-house that we can see going out either on sales or on loan, especially the English players. Let's begin with a guy who was in the news for all the wrong reasons yesterday. Ainsley Maitland-Niles rolled over his vehicle. Fortunately, was not seriously hurt. But that raised a lot of eyebrows, certainly here on the pod, I'm sure across Arsenal Twitter, across the Arsenal fan base. Doesn't help if you're thinking of moving him, and it appears the club is looking to move him. What does this do for his short-term future?
I don't think the accident itself will have any real bearing. There's been cases of stuff before. You've had footballers do far worse things, like a Chelsea player. So I don't think that will change anything. I think in terms of whether he goes or stays, from some of the reports you hear, I think that decision is completely in his hands. Whether or not he wants to stay and compete as a right back, or if he wants to move on and become a centre midfielder. Now, obviously, there's been all sorts of talk on the tactics and whether a fullback at Arsenal, is that much different from being a centre midfielder elsewhere. But personally, I'd love to see him stay and become a right back for Arsenal. But wherever he goes, I don't think any, behavioural issues or anything are really there that's going to put any club off.
Okay. All right. Sam, I got two questions for you. Kind of the bad tasting question and the good tasting question. Let's get the bad one out. We all assumed Willian was going to move on. Sad news out of Florida yesterday. FC Miami announced that they had broken off talks with Willian about signing him. Apparently, he asked for a wage that was far more in line with his Chelsea wage 2 seasons ago. Actually much higher than what Arsenal paid him last year. David Beckham, who runs FC Miami, was not willing, or is it Inter Miami, I believe, but they were not willing to pay it. And so we're looking at the possibility that Arsenal later in the window is going to have to try to find a home for this player. What are they to do?
I've got a sneaky suspicion wherever David Luiz lands, Willian will follow. And I think that Arsenal will probably forego any transfer fee just to get him off the books. That's my personal opinion. Whether I think that will happen, I don't know. But you would suspect the MLS would be a perfect landing ground for Willian. But I think that his contract demands are just going to be well out of the ballparks of them teams, because you probably know a lot more than this than myself. The designated players get a slightly higher cap than the regular players.
Right. And they get 3 foreign players, but I think the limit is somewhere around 8 million for total for the whole of it. So if Willian is asking for I understand there's 170,000 pounds I saw in the story. It wasn't even dollars, it was pounds per week. That's just too much of a club's budget. I don't think there's an MLS club in the league that would entertain those demands, unfortunately.
So yeah, personal opinion, I think wherever David Luiz goes, Willian will follow.
All right, let me give you a tastier one, because that's really not a good question to chew on. This just puts a bad taste in everybody's mouth. We haven't talked about the striker position. News yesterday that Isak, the striker from Real Sociedad, who's playing so well for the Swedish national team, has extended at Sociedad. And that kind of put a dent in, rumors that he was an Arsenal target. Arsenal likes him, that is clear. But the chances of getting him this summer really seemed to take a hit with that news, or did they? But his extension was, I believe, through 2026. So if Sociedad have pulled out the term, obviously they probably inserted new language that raised his transfer fee, whatever his trigger might be. Will Arsenal stay interested in him? Will they move to other targets, or will they wait until next summer, where it looks like this is a very limited striker market, it seems, this year?
Yeah, I think the striker one's a bit tricky, because obviously you've still got Eddie, you've got Balogun, you've got Lacazette still at the club. I think a lot will depend on what happens with Eddie and Laka. If they both depart, could I see the club going in for a big name striker? Potentially. As we know, Edu notified Isaac's camp to say that we're very interested in you. I think this is one that Arsenal will track. If somebody correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I'm pretty sure in La Liga they have to have a buyout clause. So depending on what that clause is, because I don't think that is public knowledge at this point, depending on what that clause is dependent on whether Arsenal go in for him after sales of said strikers. But also then if you're going to look at potentially homegrown, it's been mooted before Calvert-Lewin. But again, a lot of that's going to depend on Rafa Benitez, newly joining Everton. So it's interesting, but we know Arsenal, they can pull a name out of the air that nobody knows about. So it'll certainly be one to watch, I'd say a lot later in the transfer window.
All right. Ryan, let's bring it back to you. I think we're touching on all the names. There are a few that I didn't touch on. We talked about Niles, Sam Ray's, Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson. Those are two names. Arsenal have to figure out what to do with them. We haven't talked about Joe Willock. It looks like Joe's probably today. Looks like Joe Willock is staying at Arsenal. But let's take those three homegrown players. Didn't play a lot last year. What are odds of them leaving? Let's do kind of a rapid round. Let's start with Nketiah.
So, probably not supposed to say this, but I'm going to anyway. I think Patrick Schick from Leverkusen is going to West Ham. So, Eddie Nketiah is probably going to go to Leverkusen for about 10 million.
Okay. So, Reece Nelson. He started as a starter. He played a starter the first month of the season, got hurt, and then just fell off the radar. Where is he now? What's his status with the club?
His contract runs out in 2022. I saw earlier that he's put his house up for sale. Nelson is hugely, hugely frustrating for me because he burst onto the scene. He was so talented. He could have been doing what Saka is doing 2-3 years ago. But he got into that habit of playing 2 good games, injured for 4 games, having a good game, injured for 5 games. And injuries have really hampered him, and it's a shame because I really rate Nelson, but it's probably likely he's going to leave. Probably try and get as much as we can. I have a feeling he's probably going to go to Palace to help Patrick Vieira out when he finally gets announced as Palace manager.
How much do you think Arsenal could get for him at this point?
Well, this is Arsenal we're talking about, so probably about 4 million.
Wow. Oh, that's a gut punch. That's a good punch. All right, gentlemen, we're 40 minutes here. So I guess we're getting the end of injury time here in the pod. I'm kind of surprised we had so many names, but I looked like I've touched on all of them. No, there's one more. Jacob, we haven't talked about this gentleman. Hector Bellerin. Somehow he slid through the cracks of the pod. It was assumed a couple of weeks ago he was headed to Spain. We've heard his preference is Spain. He's got interest from Villarreal. Obviously, his old manager is there. That he might be going to Atletico Madrid, but that was contingent on them moving Trippier out. Those moves to Spain have gone quiet. And then yesterday, news that Inter Milan is interested in him. They've sold Hakimi to PSG. They need a right back, and apparently he's their target. The price that was listed was about 20 million euros. What's going to happen to Hector?
Yeah, well, it looks for all odds that he is leaving, and it has looked that way for a long time. It's just obviously Inter Milan looks set up to get in. They've just sold their right back. They've got a space. They've got the money. But, there are the reports saying that Hector wants Spain. He wants Spain, even if it's a so-called lesser club. However, if he is going to move, he's not going to get many better offers than Milan. That is a big club. They are on the up. So I think it is one that probably will progress. You could go to Villarreal, but, if you've got the offer for Milan, why would you not take it if you were him? It would be a great move for him at this current time.
All right. So let's do one quick.
Raf,
yes, please.
Quickly. I don't know if you remember the guy from last summer, Patrick Juan, the one that was very, very early on Gabriel Magalhaes to Arsenal.
Oh, okay. Yes, vaguely.
He's said that Arsenal are in talks with representatives of Marseille midfielder Boubacar Kamara, and the player is interested in a move to Arsenal. So I'm wondering if we've said to Marseille, you can have Saliba on loan, you can have Guendouzi, but we'll take Kamara off your hands.
Well, when you said, and this slipped my mind, when you said Saliba to Marseille, my first thought was, is there some kind of linkage between this and Guendouzi? Because apparently Arsenal were trying to get more out of more out of Marseille cash-wise for Guendouzi. And I thought, is this a sweetener to say, okay, we'll let you loan this player if you pay us for this other one? And this does make some sense now that you mentioned it. Talk about Kamara. It was just name kind of bound in here.
Oh, where do I start?
Wherever you want to.
I think you guys remember my reaction the other night when we was first linked. If we sign him, I will have to take a very, very long, cold shower. He is just perfect. He's a dogged midfielder. He wins the ball back. He's fast. He's tall. He's good in the air. He can play centre back. He can play right back, central midfield, defensive midfield. You name it, he can do it. And he's also my go-to defensive midfielder on career mode on FIFA.
Right. So that's plenty. All right. More than I expected. All right. So I was going to go around. Let's do one more round. Jacob finished. Sam, you're going to begin. 2 moves in. Tavares, Lokonga, look, those are to bed. White looks this close. Jacques is done. Going back to the beginning, what do you expect? It's Friday, but the weekend, next week things have to pick up. Arsenal are going to be in the United States to play Inter Milan 3 weeks from Sunday. The wheel has to start spinning faster. What do you expect in the next week? What do you expect to happen by the time we come to the next pod?
When we doing the next pod?
Probably maybe this day next week. Let's say a week from now. Let's put that. Let's say the pod, but a week from now. What do you expect to know?
The 2 announcements I'd like to see. I'd like to see the talk on the additional midfielder to be more concrete of where we are, because knowing that Juventus have got their meeting early doors in the week.
Right.
So I'd like to know the outcome of that. And if it is the case of they can't match it, then I would say 90% Locatelli would be ours. Although we know Spurs, I saw a report Spurs were coming in for him or thinking about making the bid. It's like, behave yourself.
Always. That's like hearing Napoli is in, right?
Exactly. Behave yourselves. Get back to the shadows.
All right. Yeah, they still have to sort they just finally sorted their manager business out, and that doesn't seem to have helped their roster situation. Eddie, Jacob, again, same question to you. What do you think, or what are you hoping for, and what do you expect to happen in the next 7 days?
I want to see more clarity on some of our players leaving. I think because we know they're targeting the incomings, but we also need that squad space. So I'd like to see, some of these young English ones we talked about, like we think Jack is going to be done, but just, Bellerin a bit more concrete than the interest, just so we kind of know where we stand. And even some interest on some of the lesser names like Runarsson, because we don't want him hanging around the squad taking up a non-homegrown space. So I just want to see more concrete on the outgoings for a little bit. Even if they're not done and announced, just, that feeling of, that's what's happening.
Okay. You get the last word this week, Ryan. You're bringing us possibly Kamara. Again, more moves in the next 4 days like this that were nowhere today could just fly out of the sky. But what are you hoping to see in the next week, post-White?
I'm gonna drop a bomb.
Do it.
I think we're gonna see reports that Martin Odegaard is back on. I think we're gonna see there's a possible argument between Ancelotti wanting to keep him and Perez wanting to sell him. And I think Perez will win, and I think it'll be worth £50 million. And I think Odegaard will be back on. I think we'll see the announcements of Tavares. I think Lokonga will be fully agreed. I think Ben White will be fully agreed, pending England's qualification in the next round. And that's what I think is going to
Locatelli?
next week.
Nothing?
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. Lots of surprises. Again, and knowing the deadline, Arteta needs to get his squad in, but he is building his squad from all looks. So again, a lot to chew on. There'll be a lot to chew on next week. So for all of us all of you rather, who have stayed with us these nearly 50 minutes, we want to thank you for joining us here on the pod. Come back, follow us on Twitter on our account, Daily Gooner Pod. Follow Ryan, Daily Gooner Ryan. Follow me, Daily Gooner Ref. Follow Sam, Daily Gooner Sam. Follow Jacob. Jacob, can you share yours with the good people out there?
Yep, it's Jacob Weeks, SHU.
Okay, all right. And on that optimistic note, we bid you a good evening on this Friday evening, and we hope to have more good Arsenal news for you next week. You've got the board, man.